Hello, I'm John O'Connor, Executive Chairman and founder of ScaleUp Group, and I'm delighted today to be warmly welcoming Frank Reeves in what is the first of our series of talks with successful tech entrepreneurs with whom we have had an association along their journey. In this case, Frank, you had the good fortune for me to be your founding chairman at Avio, which you led until it was acquired last year. I became your chairman just before I created ScaleUp Group, building on my own entrepreneurial journey, advising tech entrepreneurs like yourself looking for Series A funding, plus we always co-invest too, believing as we do in our clients. End of the plug. Frank, as you know, the purpose of our series of talks is for others to pick up from yourself and other successful entrepreneurs some key pointers for them to use on their journey, including avoiding pitfalls too, of course. But first things first, Frank, perhaps you'd briefly explain your background pre-Avio, please.
Sure. Thank you, John. Good to see you again. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I am from Ireland, originally living in London, but I co-founded a business in Ireland called Avio back in 2003. I really only had one job after university before stepping into Avio, and that was computer programming in Dublin with Sun Microsystems. So I'm sort of a techie product programming guy by trade, but 3 years of that was sort of enough, and then the whole Avio story began. So not a huge sort of CV prior to Avio, John.
So not exactly a CEO training school background then.
Not exactly an on-the-job MBA, I think.
Yeah. So you came on board to Avio, what year would that be now?
It was 2000. It was 2002 when I started programming the code, their hotel booking engine. So I started software programming for that in 2002, and I think our first hotel customer was 2003.
Okay, so you had a 21 year overnight success story.
Exactly.
And do you recall what Avio's revenue and headcount, for instance, were at that stage?
Well, we bootstrapped the company, and we really had no capital. I was one of three co-founders, and one of the three had some land that we could put as security against a bank loan, and that was about it. So I had to write the software. We had to get an initial set of customers before we had some revenue. And then ultimately that revenue allowed me to go full-time, then the other co-founders full-time, and we sort of slowly gained some momentum. But yeah, day one was starting with close to zero.
Right, so a genuine bootstrap startup. So revenues were zero at the beginning, headcount with the three of you, as you say. And then you sold the business, jumping way ahead. And just could you tell our audience some indications of the growth in terms of revenue and headcount, etc.?
Right. So headcount, I think we were 83 staff. I had moved to London, so I've been based in London since 2009. 62 from memory of those staff were in Limerick, Ireland. That was really the sort of center of excellence. That's where we founded the company and then incorporated a UK entity in order to gain EIS status for some investment in 2014. But 62 of the staff were Ireland when we exited, and then the remainder were UK. That was more of a go-to-market function in the UK market, Europe, and North America. In terms of revenues, I'm still a little tied to around the actual number, but to give you an indication, we did our first equity raise in late 2014 with Calculus Capital. And when Calculus exited, like myself, on the sale of the business at late 22, they had a 5.5 times return on their investment. So pretty good growth from that 2014 mark. A pretty flat company prior to that. We were struggling under some venture debt, and we certainly had a few issues and had some sort of areas that we were not really focused on. But I think from 2015, 16, we really started to see the benefit of restructuring of the business and a tighter go-to-market value proposition.
That didn't happen to coincide with my involvement, did it, Frank?
No, purely coincidence.
Yeah, pure coincidence. No, top marks to you, and certainly, ScaleUp Group, as I mentioned at the beginning, we co-invest, and so some of us were delighted to be recipients of your excellent leadership. So well done. So we've done kind of the beginning. We've done the end. I guess really for most people listening, watching us, the journey itself is always most informative.
Right.
And I think I know the answer to the next question, but when you ended up being CEO, and perhaps you could explain how that happened, did you have any specific goals in mind?
Mm-hmm. So I became CEO in 2013. So I'd sort of from the early days of writing the code, I guess, as I built out the engineering team, it was a CTO function. And then I think I shifted more toward the operational side, so a COO. But you wear many hats, don't you? Particularly in the early days. We raised some money in Ireland from Enterprise Ireland. I think that was in the region of 850,000 euros over 2 rounds, convertible loan notes. That sort of got us ticking through the big recession in 2009. We then needed some venture debt, which we raised out of the UK in 2011, I believe it was. And we were really struggling under that. Growth had plateaued. We had, I think, assumed, with the benefit of hindsight, we had certainly assumed that venture debt relationship would survive for 3, 4, 5 years. And I think we got 1 year in and they were calling time at it and wanted everything back. And we weren't really in a position to do that. So we found ourselves in 2012 in a position of technical insolvency with a very disgruntled venture debt company that were just applying maximum pressure, almost too much pressure. And we had a few things internally that were not really firing as they should. Kind of a disillusioned team, and culture was a bit strained. And I think you put all of those things together, the shareholders sort of decided that we needed to make some changes. And I was asked to become CEO in 2013. It was very obvious the job that needed to be done, both in terms of refinancing and restructuring the balance sheet, getting out from under the debt, repositioning the company, and then essentially sort of rebuilding or restarting, rebooting the culture. So those were my kind of early priorities. And I think that having that really clear focus on what needed doing, I guess, together with the credibility of what had been achieved, allowed us eventually to get that equity raise done. So in 2014, as I said, we raised £3.5 million from Calculus Capital here in London. And we had incorporated a UK entity of Avio, sort of a topco entity, in order to be EIS qualified to deliver that.
So I interpret that as a combination of naivety and unjustified bravery to take on what seemed like an enormous challenge. And again, because of an insider, I suppose, getting that refunding done and was not an easy task, was it? And I know Calculus, it was one of the first investments made by Richard Moore of Calculus. And I mean, I have to say now, Frank, that when he told me what he'd done, I did question whether it was the right thing to have done at that moment in time.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of these philosophical questions. Knowing what you know now, I mean, I always wonder whether sometimes experience is a blocker to ambition, because one is so much aware of what might go wrong. Knowing what you know, would you still have taken on that challenge?
I would not have taken on the venture debt round. I think one of the big learns is, we were very much a bootstrapped lifestyle company, and it had sort of plateaued. And I think the culture of a lifestyle lifestyle business going in to a significant venture debt round. We just were not ready. So with the benefit of hindsight, we shouldn't have done that then. Or had we done that, we needed to make some pretty radical changes to how we were running the business in order to be able to function under the instrument of a venture debt and a debenture that goes along with that. So, but I think this is where the sort of the founder mentality comes in. You know, you've got so much in the business that there was really only one way out for me in terms of when the shareholders did come to me and say, look, we think, you know, with me taking the business forward, we might have a shot at refinancing this. I certainly believed in the business. I did have a vision for how we could do things differently and how we could, you know, differentiate and reposition and turn things like culture around. In that said, I was hugely relieved to get the calculus funding round done. I think it really did save the business and give me, for the first time in a long time, an opportunity to take a breath and start to put one foot in front of the other to look at where we go from there.
Yeah. And you know, top marks to you for shining through. What struck me about yourself was your integrity was absolutely clear, and you were someone I felt we could trust implicitly. Like many ScaleUp Group clients, you know, you were a first-time CEO, so there's no real track record as a CEO to go on. So it all came down to your commitment, drive, ambition, intelligence, integrity. And one of the things that struck me, I suppose, again, this founder can-do attitude was that, you know, that's when Booking.com, I think, was really become the dominant force in hotel. And the notion that your company can actually compete with this enormous entity by allowing for independent hotels primarily to use your booking engine, I think was quite counterintuitive, and that certainly intrigued me as well.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it still remains the biggest pain point for hotels. You know, even the big brands hotels, I think, alongside the independents, still see so much profit erosion due to the nature of distribution, right? So online travel agents like Booking and Expedia, and there could be 20 of those guys that an average hotel will work with, and the margins per booking are in the region of 20%. So if half of your business comes at a cost of 20%, you're really struggling to find profitability for that asset elsewhere. So yeah, I think it remains one of the biggest barriers to healthy profitability for hotels. We had, I think, both a compelling product. We certainly had a vision for how we could scale, how we could get beyond the sort of the growth plateau that we had arrived at. I think because I didn't come into the business, John, as a sort of a CEO, together with the fact that the road we walked was very difficult for a period of time, I was certainly kind of done with the lifestyle business phase. Nice as it was for a time, I was really looking for the support of a board to deliver, you know, where we truly felt the business could grow. We had a very international ambition. We were, and had been for quite a while, the biggest booking engine partner to hotels in the Irish market. But the addressable market of independent hotels is so vast. And our proof points, you know, we had established proof points internationally to show that, well, Ireland is not a unique sort of business case, right? What we've achieved there, we can achieve some healthy market share internationally as well.
Yeah, well, that really touches upon your whole go-to-market strategy, doesn't it? And how having that early loyalty of those very prestigious castle hotel types in Ireland must have made a big difference to the acceptance of other hotels around the world, UK included, of course.
Yeah.
And
we had.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, we had, as you say, we had compelling case studies and very long-standing customer relationships. But I think in a market that was becoming a competitive landscape, I should say, for booking engines that was becoming quite commoditized. We had a very differentiated outcome in terms of what we would achieve. What working with Avio achieved for hotels was real P&L impact. And whilst we, together with our competitors, were sort of doubling down on we've got the best booking engine or we've got the best booking engine, we decided that there was really limited growth opportunities within that market, and we needed to compete more on the business outcome. So if you remember, we I think one of our first big go-to-market initiatives post calculus was this 25% guarantee, where we just bravely went into the market and said, look, this is what working with us means, right? Everyone's got great technology, that's fine. But when you boil it all down, working with Avio means that you get at least 25% growth in your direct channel, which is your most cost-effective booking channel. And that then is tied directly to a P&L impact. So that was a very sort of differentiated go-to-market strategy, talking about business outcomes rather than how great we were as a company and how great our tech was. And that really resonated in the market. We worried, of course, that some competitors would follow us into that value prop, but none ever did, which was wonderful. And then I think the second big go-to-market win we had was being so early to the AI opportunity. So long before OpenAI and ChatGPT, we had rebuilt and repositioned our platform as Allura.ai in 2017. So we were very much the first in our market to pioneer the application of AI for the e-commerce market within travel. And that took time to get those messages across. Nobody else was really talking about AI, certainly not in travel. But over time, things did sort of heat up. And of course, as we came through COVID and came out of COVID, people not only started, developing more of an awareness to the opportunity of AI, but they started then rightly associating Avio as being first on that. So having several years of competitive advantage or blue ocean in that space. And I think those two things were really big hitters from a go-to-market perspective for us.
Yeah, they're very transformational, weren't they? And given your technology background primarily, it's interesting that you decided not to lead with a technology message so much as a profit improvement message, which is considerable thinking out of the box as far as you're concerned, I would have imagined.
Well,
and then secondly,
I hoped it would be win-win. I hoped it would resonate in the market in a way that was differentiated. But back to some of the cultural stuff that I think we all knew needed sort of bolstering. I thought this gave us such a compelling mission statement, right? So we do lots of different things, and we're differentiated in each market. But actually, what we do is we're responsible. We're putting our neck on the line to get every hotel to and beyond that 25% growth mark. So if anybody asks you what we do, that's what we do. That's why you come to work, and that's how we all play a part in contributing to that. So it really ticked a big box internally in terms of reestablishing who we are and why that matters.
And it showed to your clients that you were sat around their side of the table, seeing the problems they were dealing with. You weren't some techno babble, pitch. And then, of course, the other one is a very much a technology leap, as you say, with AI. One of my hobby horses at the moment, because we're in the ScaleUp group hat, we get so many companies coming to us telling us how truly wonderful their offering is based upon AI, and clearly it's a differentiation. And what business type issues are you solving? The fact is AI is fantastic. So you seem to have achieved that very early on. So from a viewpoint of a hotel or even someone booking, how did your AI initiative, make a difference to them?
So there were two big statements that we made around AI, and the framing positioning of all of that was that, look, everyone else is selling you a booking engine, but 9 times out of 10, these bookings are not guaranteed. People can cancel, and COVID, of course, did a lot to move the world towards even more flexibility. So our positioning to the market was, well, a booking doesn't really matter. That's only half of the challenge. You really need these guests to turn up, right? If you're going to think about acquiring a guest, it's the guest, not the booking. So we saw opportunities both on, the booking engine side. So let's nurture each guest on a hotel website. Let's personalize, let's predict their journey. Let's sell to North American families looking at London in a different way than we would to domestic couples or a corporate, for example. And we studied, I guess, the guest journey and all of the data points that sort of that determines those guest journeys. So we achieved more direct bookings due to personalization. But then we focused our Allura platform on the cancellation challenge and applied the AI towards, could we actually predict cancellation? What does guest engagement mean in terms of risk of cancellation? Which types of guests are more likely to cancel? What does the guest journey tell you about that? What is the pricing in the market? What role does it play in terms of cancellation? So the second part of that sort of double hitter was A, more bookings, and B, fewer cancellations, because we could spot the high risk cancellations and ultimately secure those. And those two things turned into just significantly more attractive guest acquisition pieces. And there was nobody else looking at things in that way. And it took us probably 2 years of data gather and capture around guest journey to be credible talking, for example, about cancellations. So we knew that we had created this really big moat around our business. One of the real upsides of AI, of course, is this sort of ability to learn from prior interactions. So we saw our impact getting stronger and stronger. We could predict cancellation rate, for example, with over 80% accuracy by the end. So there was some pretty compelling stuff, all of which were hugely significant in terms of the sale of Avio in 2022. We were very differentiated. We were delivering a meaningful impact to the bottom line of our hotel customers, which allowed us to ask for a share of the upside in an otherwise differentiated market. So we were positioned in a way that the rest of the market really wasn't. And I think we really did achieve this standout brand positioning in terms of the booking engine landscape.
Very impressive. You said something there. You allowed you to ask for a share of the upside.
Right.
Does that mean in your commercial arrangements with the hotel, you had some sort of co-sharing of gain?
Exactly. So we would put, for many hotels, we would put all of our profitability, all of our income, we would assign with the delivery of a direct guest, right? So if we can go and deliver direct guests, so if Expedia charge you 22, 23%, in very simple terms, we might ask for 3% of a confirmed guest checking in that has been both nurtured to the point of booking and then ultimately de-risked for cancellation through our Allura platform. And when you run the economics of all of that, the P&L impact was still way north of 25% in terms of cost of acquisition. So we felt very credible in wanting a piece of the upside and differentiated our company from all of the commoditized booking engines that were, at quite a low monthly fee that had no incentive to be better at what they did, that would talk about impacting the bottom line, but had no economics to allow them to really, focus on that and invest in that. So yeah, we had a different set of commercial agreements with hotels, and which was, I think by the end we were a rule of 40 company. We were growing. We had incredibly strong EBITDA. It was all really kind of coming good for us.
Very, very creative, and again, very empathetic with your clients and sharing their goals and walking the walk, talking the talk. Also, what fascinated me, after I'd left yourselves, was COVID came along, and an outsider would have thought, well, that's the end of the hotel industry for at least 2 years. Yet, again, you were able to, well, from my perspective, sail through it almost unscathed. I'm sure that wasn't entirely the case, but could you perhaps just touch upon that?
Yeah, I think COVID, again, we took a couple of big gambles during COVID. I was conscious both of, how the Avio and Delora brands were being sort of perceived in the market during COVID, but also, of course, very conscious of morale and culture internally. So one of the big things we did early on in COVID, we just took all of our resources, our intellectual property, our staff, their time, and we focused on training hotels. We thought, well, look, all of these hoteliers around the world are being furloughed, and they are certain to come back. If they do come back, they're certain to come back to an industry that needs them to do more with less. So let's almost open source our sort of, secret sauce, our digital marketing, our, conversion rate optimization, and let's just upskill hoteliers. So we launched very early on in COVID. We mobilized a hotel digital academy, and trained thousands of hoteliers, who were working from home or not working from home. But nonetheless, they were engaged with our brand at a really early stage through COVID, and that really resonated in the industry. I think others would have done the same, but taken a bit more time. I think our agile culture allowed us to just jump in and sort of hit it really early on.
And what were you training them in Frank? What were you training them in?
All things digital marketing, brand.com, how to develop your hotel brand online, how to gain competitive advantage in search engines, the world of pay-per-click and digital marketing, the world of analytics around guest journey and conversion rate optimization. So all of the digital skills that are actually transferable to other industries in large part. But nonetheless, we were like, look, you got to come back from COVID at a level higher than where you were going in. And we think that gives you a competitive advantage in a tighter market on the other side. But then critically, internally, John, it gave us that huge focus, almost like the guarantee. It gave us that huge focus during COVID as well. Our job has shifted, and we're now here to upskill hoteliers, and we're doing that on our own dime. And if we feel that if we do that and we do the right thing, so to speak, then we'll reap some of the benefits on the other side.
Presumably, you weren't charging for those training courses.
No, we weren't.
So you had no booking software revenue, and you had zero revenue from training.
Yeah.
So how did you survive?
Well, we were growing well before COVID. Actually, we were beginning to mobilize a process with advisor selection to do an equity raise. So Calculus, I think, in early 22, were happy that the business was really firing and that the timing was about right. So we were actually at an early stage of that advisor selection process when COVID hit. But the business had been doing well, had been growing well, was very profitable. So we had a bit of a nest egg, I think, going in.
Right.
Hotels, in some cases, did pay for some digital marketing services during COVID. And if we remember how the industry came back, hotels were open, but with different terms and conditions, and then closed again and open. You could travel here, but not there. We, during COVID, also won the contract to power the Irish government's quarantine website. So if you were flying from any one of these 30 countries, you had to quarantine in an Irish hotel, and we won the contract to go and power all of that. There was a bit of a revenue stream through from that as well from the government. So yeah, pulling on a few different strings, we were okay. I mean, we wouldn't have been okay for much longer, but we were okay just about for long enough. And then we saw this incredible acceleration on the other side of COVID, and had, I guess, we had a stronger brand. We'd actually done some sales through COVID for hotels that were closed, but had still engaged with us during that process and wanted to be more closely aligned on the other side. So yeah, a few things came good.
Yeah, and again, that intimacy with your clients, the training program, building on your profit sharing approach, et cetera, and of course, I smile when you said you had a nest egg. I've yet to see any business plan which ever allows for any significant interruption in a continuous, unbroken upward graph of revenue. It never, and we all sit around and we check the financial models and we do this, do that, and no one ever talks about the elephant in the room, which is that once in every 5 or 6 years there's going to be some unexpected thing coming along.
Black swan,
COVID, of course, being a prime example. I'm looking at the time, Frank. We've gone off slightly what we agreed we'd talk about, but frankly, it's been far more hopefully fascinating for the audience, even if they're not in the hotel industry. I think just to see how you've aligned your business with those of your clients, and then how you've got through some unexpected challenges, and you've been very creative in your technology, etc. So I'm going to jump a little bit further now into just before we wrap up, reflections on your journey. Now that you've got a little bit of distance, having left the business pretty recently. And by the way, I'm delighted on behalf of ScaleUp Group that you're joining us, and you're going to be continuing to pass on the benefits of your great experience to our clients. But before we sort of watch you go over the sunrise, as it were, sunset, what about your reflections on your journey now? Things which you might have done differently, or anything you want to talk about, really?
Well, I would definitely take a few years off that 23-year overnight success.
Yeah.
That could never hurt. I made the right decision in deciding to sell the business. I'm really happy. We're 18 months on from that sale of Avio to a US private equity backed strategic buyer in late 2022, and I'm really happy with that decision. I think it's a very difficult decision for a founder and a CEO to make, and it takes a long time to get comfortable with that. For me, reflecting on that now, I think I definitely felt that the Avio story had been told. Like, if you'd asked me in 2022, well, what's next for Avio, I'd sort of have given you more of the same, right? And I thought that if we do an equity raise, and swap out calculus and raise some more growth capital, the industry is consolidating. AI is going to accelerate that consolidation. I do think Avio belongs as a part of a bigger company, and I don't know that I have the time, that in the market to make that happen. And I didn't feel I was leaving something within the Avio life cycle undone. I felt like the story had been kind of told in its current form, and now it needed to be part of something bigger. So that was a very important thing to really ponder. And I think looking back, those were the kind of indicators. Those were some of the decisions I made that I'm quite happy with. We were so productized that it was quite important for me, not that I knew what I wanted to do, but it was very important that I wasn't in an earn-out scenario. And because the SaaS business was so productized, I think that was a key part of it. Our culture had been, really transformed. We had multiple years registered as a great place to work business, and we were 2 of those years in the top 10. So culture was great. People, the team, the trust, everybody felt actively trusted and empowered. I mentioned the debt in terms of a learn. We shouldn't have taken venture debt and continued thinking about the world as a lifestyle company. It very nearly killed us. And I've learned a lot about venture debt. I'm not putting people off, but I think it needs to come with, some pretty big red flags around what needs to be different on the other side of that. So I think that was a very big kind of learn. And then I think we just had
what about the aspects of the leadership team, Frank? It's always struck me how the role of the founder and CEO has to change as a business scales, and also Absolutely. The impact it has on the rest of the leadership team, some of whom just can't scale up the way you'd like, and some awkward loyalty challenges there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a very big topic, isn't it, really, around culture and leadership team. I think once we got very clear, as I hope is coming across, we got very clear early on about who we were, who we wanted to be, what we stood for, and how we were different in the market, and what that meant then if you were on the bus, so to speak, and part of the Avio team. And we had a number of people internally who really stepped up and stepped into very big roles that had started in a very junior role. I'm thinking of Yvonne Donegan in HR, who started as an account manager and ended up running people and culture and really driving us around those great place to work initiatives. Martin Grogan, who came as an engineer into running the whole product side of the Allura side of things. But then externally, we brought in Michael de Jong, who I know you know, to run commercial strategy, Karina Dunn on customer success. So yeah, I think we kind of knew who we were in the market, what we were really aiming for, the ambition of the company. We really saw early signs that a lot of people internally wanted the same thing, and they stepped up, and then we were lucky to bring others in to kind of key roles. And all of the people in Avio when we were acquired and then went on and stepped up, to even bigger roles within that roll up.
Yeah, I know you had a very competent CFO as well, didn't you? Which,
exactly, Seamus Holmes, you're right.
Yeah, which not to be underestimated. When the founder is out as CEO and his team out conquering the world, making sure that everything's tickety-boo, back home, and the finances are sound, et cetera, et cetera. So you have a solid platform. So
exactly,
top marks. And your own role, Frank, I mean, it changes, doesn't it, with scaling? I mean, you move from 3 people to 83, you said right at the beginning. And you've got layers of management. So I think moving from being a doer to a leader can be hard for some people.
No doubt. I think it's easier when you have hit on the mission of what the business does and the values that you go about in order to do that. I think when everybody knows what's expected of them, and then you can really sort of assess the talent in the organization, and when people step up, I think, I mentioned earlier, I think trust was something very important to me throughout Avio, was that, trust is something that you should be able to evidence for people every day. They really felt empowered. I think that really helped with COVID as well, because people, they were just working autonomously, right? We solved for a distributed workforce, I think, really early on. But I think that makes the job of, stepping out of the operation and into the strategy. I was very much focused on, driving the brand from an innovation perspective. So as a sort of thought leader, I must have spoken at over 1,000 industry events all around the world. And I was very confident to represent the Avio team, our ambition, our innovation in doing that. But of course, me doing that and also doing things like funding meant I wasn't in the business and over the detail. But I didn't have to sweat that too much. I felt really confident that people knew what had to be done and were capable of doing it.
Yeah. But that fine line between delegation and abdication, it's it's obvious when it works. It's also obvious when it hasn't worked. And again, top marks to you for your team building, as you've just described it. Frank, thank you so much for your candor and willingness to share your experiences. Not too many warts and all. In fact, you seem to have used challenges to actually make the company an even better place to work for, and also to be a client of, which is fantastic. And I know entrepreneurs out there will have found this most illuminating. So what next for you before we do wrap up?
So I've spent over 20 years now within the travel technology industry. It's an industry, it's a sector I really enjoy. There are so many exciting technology companies out there that I think struggle around the angel stage of investment and the right kind of advice really early on. And to the extent that I've been through a journey, certainly not definitive, but, going through the journey I've been on, I think I've definitely learned some things. I'm very passionate about technology. I always was. So I've launched an angel fund and advisory company called Voirea to focus specifically on travel technology. And we have funds actively invested in travel tech this year. and I'll be building an angel fund for next year. So I think between the development of that business, the focus on hospitality, I guess, there's what I know about the industry, and then the network of other experts in the industry that fill the obvious gaps that I have. And I think together we can be a differentiated support to early stage travel technology companies, and that's what I'm going to focus on in the short term.
Along with me dragging you in to talk to ScaleUp Group clients,
As well as
your
ScaleUp,
story
of course.
is extremely inspiring. Thank you once again, Frank. Most illuminating, and I'm sure informative for our audience, who I would like to thank for tuning in. Hope you found it helpful to you in your journey. And this is one of a series, as I mentioned right at the beginning, and others will have equally, I think, interesting, inspiring stories. We're not going to run a card as to who's the best, Frank. So because you've set a very high standard, so I don't want to deter any other entrepreneurs from allowing themselves to be interviewed by me. So thanks to everyone today, and especially to you, Frank, and fantastic achievement, most inspiring. And I'm pleased to have been a small part of that journey with you. All
That's
the best.
very kind. Thank you, John, and thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for all the support.
Thank you. John O'Connell, Executive Chairman.